Now, Londoners want to see more independent coffee shops. That's according to research by the Cafe Culture Show. It found more than 60% of customers avoid chain shops to get their caffeine fix. Well, author and coffee bar consultant John Richardson is one of the speakers at the Cafe Culture exhibition and joins me now. Now, John, talk me through what this research found in terms of what consumers of coffee want.
Well, we do tend to do quite a lot of research into the coffee shop industry itself and what the cafes think that they want and how they are feeling. But what we wanted to do this time was do a really big piece of research into the consumers themselves and see is there some sort of a discrepancy. And what we really found out is that actually there's a much greater love, as it were, for the independent out there. But in reality, quite often people are still visiting the chains just because of the kind of the comfort factor or the consistency or the fact that they go to somewhere where they know relatively surely what they're going to get.
And is this something that's changed over time? Has the love for independence grown in the last few years?
Oh, I think so, and I think so particularly in London, because there are some exceptional coffee shops in London. I mean, for a period of time, probably every major city in the world would argue this now, but there's no doubt that London was the epicenter of some exceptional growth of great coffee shops. So in London in particular, there are some very good coffee shops. People are now seeing alternatives to the chains, going in and sort of comparing one flat white in a chain versus one of the independents and thinking, my goodness, that's tremendous, much better product.
So is it just the quality of the coffee that consumers are enjoying, or is there something else that independents are offering that the big chains aren't?
Well, I think there's no point in saying otherwise, that there is a move against the big chains as a result of a slight move against that corporate world, and perhaps some of the big chains who might not have paid enough tax as they could have done. So people will want to try and support that independent business person, but they will only support it so far. They still need to make sure that for their £2 or £3 for the cup of coffee, they're really getting the value. But in principle, I think most of us want to try and support that local person, whether it's in our sort of business community or where we live.
And it must be difficult for the smaller coffee shops to thrive when you can literally walk a metre and find one of these big chains. So how do they stand out from the crowd?
Well, you're absolutely right, because if you are a landlord, you're much more likely to want to get in one of the big chains because it's a much better tenant to have to a large extent. So they will always struggle, and most of the time those kinds of rents that might be available to an independent are just it's just not possible to pay. So they have to sort of maybe go a little bit further down the high street, a little bit off the high street, and then they have to have something unique. They have to have not just a better cup of coffee. In most cases, what they need to look at very strongly is, can they have a few other unique food items? Is there something else that they can do? Can they really remember consistently the customer's name? Can they remember the drink? Can they remember maybe where they went on holiday? So there's got to be a more personal experience, and hopefully a better food product, because it's not being made in a factory maybe hundreds of miles away and being sort of coached in the morning.
And there's some evidence to show that business is picking up amongst independent coffee shops. Do you imagine that will continue?
Yeah, I think it will. I think one of the critical things is that we are changing. The way that we live our lives is changing tremendously. The local pubs are closing at a rate of 30 or 40 odd a week. So they're going down at the same time as, the village halls are closing. We're using churches less as a community centre. So people are still trying to find somewhere that they can use as part of the community. So the growth continues to be there. I mean, look, we're still drinking about a third of the less cups of coffee as they do in Germany and in Sweden, about half what they do in France. So there's, we're not drinking anywhere near as much as they do in other parts of Europe. And we want community, and coffee shops, a good independent coffee shop in particular, can form part of that community that, like maybe the local pub would have done in the past.
Because people are often using them like places to work and like mini offices as well, aren't they?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the research we found that over 20% of people are consistently just using it as their office space, and therefore, the most coffee shops are having to use some form of, having to provide Wi-Fi free these days, even though that may, create the slightly annoying person sitting at their laptop with the one cup of coffee during the day. It's always a balance.
Nursing it for hours.
Well, exactly, yeah. And irritating the poor independent or the chain owner, who's then thinking, well, I've got sort of £3 for, for rental of office space for 3 hours.
Well, John, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.